In this video, you'll learn how to create this interactive spatial 3D row section right inside the Framer without writing any code. We're going to explore 3D transforms, components and interactions, and a really special component while creating this effect completely from scratch. Make sure to follow along with this full video, and by the end, you're going to have this crazy effect on your website. My name is Nandi, this is Framer University, and let's get started. Okay, so first of all, I want to highlight superpower.com, which is an amazing website, and I found this effect here, and basically it's being recreated from this section. So let's take a look at this version, which is my version. As you can see, it's not exactly the same effect that we have here, but it's pretty close and it looks pretty cool. So yeah, how we can create this inside the Framer. So if you look at this, you can probably tell that these cards are transformed in 3D, so they have different 3D rotations to place them a little bit maybe further away from us and tilt them in certain ways. And then we need to use another different component for making it interactive so that this whole 3D space is looking at our cursor. So as you can see, as I'm moving my cursor around, this whole 3D object with all of these cards within is looking at my cursor. So yeah, this is what we're gonna do in this video, and let's get started. So as you can see here, I'm in Framer. I will leave a remix link for this project in the description, so you can click that and you can get this exact same project onto your account. And then basically if you go to the left panel and click pages, you're gonna find the starter page and you can work right here. I will leave it like this with all of the assets that you need, and you can just start creating with me. I'm gonna duplicate this project, or not project, but page for myself, and I'm gonna be working right here. So I think the first thing that we can do is we can set up these components that we use inside of this 3D space, because you can see that they also have this nice hover effect. So if I hover over this card, the image scales up a little bit and also loses its opacity, and then each of them have these titles below them. So we can set up these components individually for each of these images. Let's do that. I'm gonna basically just show you one example for the first component, and then I'm gonna quickly do the rest of the components as well. So basically we can just press T on the keyboard, click here and write keyboards, or it's not even a keyboard, it's let's just write keyboards. Keyboards are cool. And then we can have this on white color and then maybe 12 pixels. So we're gonna place it right below this image, and then we will select the image and the text as well, and we will press Option Command and Enter on our keyboard. This wraps the image and the text in a stack. As you can see on the left panel, we have stack, then the image within, and the text as well. We can rename the text, the stack to image, and then we can remove its fill color because we are not really gonna need that. And then I'm gonna increase the gap between these two items here. But you can see that they are cutting off a little bit. It's because the stack that we created, which is now called image, it is set to a fixed height, and we have to switch that to fit content. So it will always nicely fit the content within. If we have more gap, it will also have a larger height. Then we can also set the width to fit content, so it will also nicely fit the content within. So the gap will be, I think, around 16, and basically that's it. That's the stack that we need, and we can now turn this into a component by right-clicking and then clicking Create Component. Here we can simply click this button here, hover/pressed, and then click hover to create the hover effect. Here I can just change some of the things about the component. For example, I can add a scale effect to the image on the right panel, scale it up just slightly, maybe 0.1 or maybe even, I think 0.1 is good, yeah. But you can see that it's cutting off. It's because this variant has overflow hidden, which means that the overflowing parts of this image around, you can see it right here, will be not visible. So if I change it to overflow visible, you can see that now these overflowing parts are nicely visible. I'm just going to change it to a little bit smaller scale, maybe to 0.05. So if we preview this by clicking this little play button here, you're going to see that as I hover over, the image scales up and it looks really nice. Maybe we can also drop its opacity. So also change the opacity to maybe 0.5 here. And you're going to see that as I hover, it scales up and loses its opacity. So now we have this as a component, and I will basically have to create the same component for all of the other images because all of them have different image sizes. We could just use this single component. We could go inside, maybe create a component variable for the image on the right panel. And now you can see that I could just simply change the image, upload a new one. And yeah, I could do the same thing with the title. I could create a component variable for the title, and then I could change that as well right here. So if that's something that you want to do, you can also just use one component. But if you want to have different sizes for these images, then you have to create these components for each of the different sizes. And by the way, one more thing, inside of the component, you can also create a link variable. So if you go to the primary variant and then to the top right, click link, and then you can create a variable for that as well. And then you'll be able to assign the link to these cards here on the right properties panel on these component instances. So you not only have the hover states on these cards, but they are also actually clickable and they take you to, different pages. So yeah, probably now I'm just going to go through each of these images and create a similar component for each of them with a link variable so that we can also set these links here on the right properties panel. So I'm going to be back in a minute. So now you can see that I have the components for all of these images, and yeah, each of them have the hover state. So if I just drag one of these here to the canvas and preview it, you can see that it has the scale up effect and the opacity drop on hover. So now what we can do is we can actually create this nice 3D space with these cards. So the first thing that we're going to do is we can just draw a large frame on our breakpoint, and then we can place all of the images within and apply a 3D rotation on them to position them in the 3D space like this. So I'm going to go back to Framer and then just draw a large frame here within our breakpoint. And then I'm going to remove the fill color of this frame. It's going to be 1000 width and 1000 height. And then basically within this frame, we're going to place all of the images. Let's just rename it to maybe images. And then, yeah, I can just drag and drop all of these inside of the images frame. So I'm going to start with this one right here. As you can see, I can just position it to the top left. On the right panel, I can also add a rotation, and I can switch it to 3D. And you can see that as I'm moving these values here, it's nicely rotating in 3D. So probably it's gonna be something like -20 and 30. And then you can see that it's now nicely rotated in 3D. We can see the effect better by applying perspective to the images frame. So the parent frame of this image, images, transform, and perspective. And then I also have to set preserve 3D so that these images within will be nicely in the same 3D space. So now you see the perspective distortion on the image. And yeah, basically I have to do this with the rest of the images. I have to put them inside of this images frame and then set a nice 3D rotation on each of them. So I can grab another card like this one, for example, and I can place it within the images frame again. And one thing I did not mention is that we can use these layout pins to pin them nicely to the correct sides. So for example, if this card is in the top right corner, then we should apply a top and the right pin. So it will nicely keep this distance from the top and this distance from the right. So when we resize this image frame, they will, somewhat be responsive. So one thing that I want to show you again here, another thing, I want to show you so many things. So we can speed up our workflow by a lot if we basically mirror the rotations of these cards. So for example, if we have a card here on the left, and we already know it's a 3D rotation, for example, it's -20 along the X and 30 along the Y, then we can just basically paste in the same rotation values to this other card here on the right, and just mirror the Y rotation in this case. If it was, mirrored here to the bottom, so right here, then we would flip the X rotation, so we would have +20 instead of -20. So for example, I can apply a 3D rotation here to this card on the right, rotate 3D, and then the X was -20, we can keep that. It basically tilts it a little bit to the bottom, and then we can have -30 instead of 30, and then now you can see it's nicely mirrored, and we didn't have to mess around with finding the right values. So once you have a value, for example here, you can mirror that to the bottom, to the right, and then to here as well. So here I'm probably just gonna speed up the video and quickly put in all of these image components and set the correct 3D rotation values for them. But you can also play around with these. Maybe you want to have a little bit different 3D rotation, a little bit different effect. But yeah, basically that's it. But I just remembered that I need to show you one more thing before I speed up the part of the video. And this is going to be the depth value that we can also play around with. So you can see on this right here that some of these cards are further away from us, especially these two right here, the case studies, and then we have this right here, micro interactions. So the way we can move them further away from us is with the depth property. Here we have case studies, so let's just move it here. It was around here, and we can just have the depth. And as you can see, as I'm changing the depth to a smaller value, it is basically getting further away from us. And it will be also really nice when we apply the interaction so it follows our cursor, because it really, look like it's further away from us, and we'll have this nice 3D effect. If you want to place something a little bit further away from you, you can use a minus depth. If you want to bring something closer to you, you can use the depth on the plus values, so maybe 200, 500, or something like that. And so now I'm going to really speed up this part of the video and quickly put in all of these images. So now I have all of the image components within the images frame, and all of them have a nice 3D rotation. So we have basically created this 3D space. If I preview this site, now it looks like this. It looks already pretty cool, but I think we can make it look a little bit better if we make it follow the cursor. So how do we do that? We can basically first of all wrap this images frame into another frame. We can do that by pressing Option, Command and Enter on our keyboard. So now this images is wrapped by this stack frame. We can press Shift and A on our keyboard, so this stack will now fit the content within, which is the images frame, which has 1000 pixels width and height. And we can call this, 3D space. And now what we're gonna do with this is we're gonna just put it right here on the canvas. We're going to move it outside of the desktop waypoint, so it is now no longer part of our website. Now what we can do is we can bring in a special component that will help us with the interactive effect. So I will go to framer.university and I will go to the resources page and search for 3D look. And then I'm going to click this resource and copy the component. Now I can come back to the Framer project and press Command and V to paste in the component. And now as you can see, this is here on our canvas. But as you can see, it says set up the component, connect a frame to this component. So I can just grab this little connector and connect the 3D space frame to it. Basically that's it. We have created the effect because this 3D look component will turn any element inside the framer into like an interactive 3D element. If we take a look at this now, you can see that it will nicely, look at the cursor, but it is looking a little bit weird. So I'm gonna take a look at why this is happening. I think maybe we have to remove the perspective here on this images frame, and then I have to add the perspective here on the components right properties panel and set it to a lower value, because then it will mean a stronger effect. So now not 5000 but 500. Now let's preview this and see if it looks better. No, it still looks quite flat, so I don't know why is this happening, honestly. Okay, so I realized what was the issue here. Basically what we have to make sure is that, as you remember, we've wrapped the images frame into another frame, which is now called 3D space. And so this 3D space has to be overflow visible. and then this effect will look better and it's not gonna look flat. Now as you can see, it's real and 3D. Just make sure that both wrapping frames here, the 3D space is also overflow visible, the images frame within also overflow visible, and also here the images has to have preserve 3D on yes. And then if you do all of these right, then basically this effect will look something like this here on the website. So now you can see that all we have left to do is the little title and description here in the center. We can add that really easily. We can just create a frame here inside of this desktop breakpoint. As you can see now, it's positioned relatively, so I can just switch it to absolute and center it with Option H and Option V. And then I will remove the field color and then turn it into a layout or a stack, set the direction to vertical, and I'll just add some text layers within this stack. Okay, so now as you can see, we have the title and the description here, and then I can just set the height to fit content, and then I will pin it to the left and to the right so it's nicely responsive, and these text layers within will also be fill width, and they have a little max width so they don't grow bigger than a certain size. And yeah, I think basically that's it. Maybe here to make sure that we have a little bit more space on the left and the right on the text, we can add a padding on the left and the right on this frame that we created for the text layers. So let's just add 20 and 20 on the left and the right. And I think that's it. One little issue that we're going to notice is that here we cannot hover this card and we can hover this card. So why we cannot hover this one? It's because we have this stack that we created for the text and it's over the actual card that we want to interact with, and it's just preventing us from interacting with the layer below it, which is the card. So the way we can prevent this from happening is by selecting the stack, which wraps the title and subtitle, and on the right panel we can add style pointer events none. So we can no longer interact with this stack, meaning that we can now interact with layers below it. So now I can hover over these cards and each will have a nice hover state. So yeah, basically that's it. That's how you can add this effect to your website, and you can see that it's pretty much responsive. Of course, on phone, you're not really gonna like hover around because you don't really have a cursor on phone. But yeah, basically that's it. That's how you create this effect for your Framer website without writing any code. If you enjoyed this video and watched this so far, make sure to comment pizza so I will know that you watched this video so far. Also, comment if you have any questions or you didn't understand something. I'm gonna do my best to answer all of you guys. Make sure to also check out Framer University. I have a bunch of cool resources, remixes, and components that you can use if you are learning Framer. Like this video, subscribe for more, and I'm gonna see you in the next one.